Good evening.
How you doing, Mr. Lamb?
I'm excited to be here.
I've been having a problem trying to locate the procedures for that field trip. I'm getting a lot of verbal information, but
get in touch with your auxiliary services at central office.
okay.
Dr. Lamb, how are you?
I'm good, Sonia. I hope you are.
No, I'm not. How come? I'm going to ask the real crazy question, and maybe you and Dr. Singh can help me. How come the schools sometimes don't want to give up information that you asked for?
Because they think you're gonna use it against them.
No, because the only thing that I'm having an issue with is the budget, which I'm gonna have to go to. I think it's the NC schools that I saw where they to show how they use the budget from last year, because they will not give me the budget. And the other thing I was trying to find
When you say they won't give you the budget, what is their response to you when you say I'd like to see a copy of the school's budget?
That it has not been approved yet.
Well, there you go. It's not been approved yet. But
so can I use
so what I would say is can you provide me with the one from last year that was approved?
Okay.
What we're looking for is, does the budget contain all four of the funding sources? Does it have what federal funds you get, what state funds, what district funds, and what your local school funds are? We're trying to look at that in terms of, is everything there? Because I need for y'all to understand that you have a lot of different funding sources, and each one of them has their own code, but more importantly, they have their own way that you can spend them and what you can spend them for. And you've got to understand that. Now, one of the things that I'm noticing is people are mistaking purchasing with budgeting. Purchasing is your purchase order system. How do you buy something? Budget is what are our priorities in terms of equity and transparency. And that notion is how much, as the last bullet on OMA Task 1 is, how much input does your school improvement team, which is all about equity and transparency, how much input do they have in the local school budget?
I don't even think they have seen be honest, I don't even think the school improvement team even sees the budget.
Then how can we be sure that we have transparency and equity? And how can we be sure that our budget supports our school improvement initiatives? We go through all this trouble as principals, just like you folks are doing all 6 evidences, which is basically the school improvement plan process. You have an academic piece, which was your APSEL. You have a personnel piece, which was your APTEL. We're doing the budget and the master scheduling piece. Then we're going to do the SKIP, which is the community piece. And then we're going to do the cultural piece. And we put all that together, it becomes the school improvement plan. And that school improvement plan has all these different initiatives in it that require both personnel and money and time to pull those off. And we have to make some decisions. Budgeting is not, we take all the money and divide it equally. We have to make some decisions. Some people get a lot, some don't get any. But we shouldn't take that burden on ourselves as principals. We need to make sure that our team, that's why it's called the team, says what's the priorities in our building. And that's where we need to put our time and money and personnel into those identified need areas that we have. It doesn't do any good to know that we need to work on reading. We don't put any money in that or any time. We don't change our master schedule to give us some more minutes of reading instruction. Those are the kinds of things. This is not rocket science. You run your data from your standardized scores, you identify your gaps in learning, and then we put things in place to solve those, to try to solve those issues. But we've got to have time and money and people to do that. And if we identify these things and we never put our master schedule, which is time, or our money, our budget behind them, then our triangle doesn't work. At the top of that triangle is our school improvement plan, and the bases that hold that up, that whole structure, are our budget and our master schedule. And if our school improvement team doesn't play a part in this, then we can't be assured that we're doing anything other than just what we did before. What's the definition of insanity, Sonia?
It's been like pulling teeth from a tiger.
Because we have the way that we do things, and folks resist change and doing better. But they think if we just keep doing the same things over and over and over again, that eventually they'll change. But that's the definition of insanity, isn't it? To do the same thing. I'm living in insanity.
Well, I am in insanity then. And the only other thing that I couldn't find is the accreditation. That's not on our website, and I've dug in every hole.
Again, you just have to ask your district. You know that you have accredited schools, either Southern Association, SACS, or you have Advanced Ed, which is now called Cognia. One or the other, you have to have accredited schools, or your kids can't get a diploma and get into college.
Right.
You have to have accredited school system. And so these things, folks don't like you asking questions because you might point out what they aren't doing. And that's part of this, is you got to know the right thing to do and how things are supposed to work.
It's very frustrating. It gets frustrating. It's very, very frustrating.
Well, of course it is. If it was easy, everybody could do it. And if it wasn't about having you go and find it, I'd already found it for you and given it to you. But the whole point is to go out and find it. When you're a school administrator, nobody's going to come over and unload the cart at your place. I can tell you that. You're going to have to get out and find stuff and be creative.
Well, I'm on a mission tomorrow.
Well, that's what you got to be on, is on a mission. School improvement is not easy. Everybody thinks, well, everybody will want to improve schools. No, they won't. Not if it bores their ox, not if it changes their money or their priorities, or changes their room or their planning period. Everybody's all in until you ask them to do something. And you've stopped preaching and now you meddling. That story. We have a culture. And everybody's up, amening the pastor until it affects them. And so one of my favorite stories to tell is my work while my wife, one of our stops, worked with a lady named Ramona, and she was from about 4 miles past where the pavement ended up in the mountains. Their church, they got a new pastor in, and they were amening him from the pulpit, from the choir and from the congregation, when he was, we're going to do this and we're not going to do that. And they were just amening that new pastor to death until he said, we're going to quit making and drinking that white liquor. And a hush fell over the place. And finally, the chairman of the deacons stood up and said, watch it there, preacher. You stop preaching and now you're meddling. And so the whole notion is everybody wants change until they're the one that has to change. And maybe they aren't the priority. So that's the whole notion of what we had you do this semester, is get out there and find these things and look and see. Now, South Carolina has basically the same laws as North Carolina, and I'm going to share my screen. Welcome, everybody. I'm glad you joined us this evening. Let me share my screen, and I've got it already pulled up here somewhere. There we go. What does it say right down here at the bottom of this? It's the principal will make, by law, will make available school budget and school improvement plans. That's not a choice that they can make to say, we don't give that out. Yes, you do. The principal shall maintain a copy of the school's current budget and school improvement plan, including any amendments to the plan, and shall allow parents of the children in the school and other interested persons, that would be you as an employee there, to review such documents in accordance to Chapter 132 of the General Statutes. So that we don't give these out. Yes, you do.
Now, is that the whole budget, Dr. Lamb? Is that the whole budget? Like, not just, well, this is what we use for remediation and that kind of thing? Because I've been basically flat out told no.
They have to give it all.
Okay.
It's all public money. It's all public money. They have to tell you all, ALL. They don't just get to, what they're doing is they're buffaloing you. They're bluffing you, trying to get you to accept that. And that you will eventually walk away. But the law is very clear. Your school budget has to have all 4 of your budget codes in it: federal, state, local, and school. And it has to be available to the public. This is public money.
Okay.
That they're telling you this is A, they're lying to you, or B, they're stupid, or they might be both. It wouldn't be the first one, but be the first ones that I would accuse them of both. But the law is clear, and every school administrator knows the law. You have to know this. You have to have a law class to get a license. You have some idiot like me pounding his fist on the table and explaining all these laws to you. You have to go through this, and when you take your exam, if you have to take the exam, and even if you don't have to take it, you have to know this. This is the kind of stuff that you have to know. That they're just trying to buffalo you. They're just trying to make you think that you're wrong. No, you're not. You can Google the law as easy as I can. Just Google 115C288. It's simple enough, and it's right there. It's a statute. If they decide that they don't want to do that, then they're breaking the law.
Okay.
But don't let them get you to believe that you're wrong. You're not wrong. They have to provide these things. I'm going to let Dr. Singh. He's younger and more in tune with what goes on in the real world than I am. Let him address this for us. This is what our resident principal is there for.
So it's funny we're talking about this because on tomorrow's agenda for our monthly principals meeting, I have a whole section about how to properly treat school interns, school administrative interns, because I've had several complaints from our interns saying that our principals just will flat out give them nothing. They treat them as kind of the bad person on campus. And I will tell you, after, especially with reading chapter 15, I don't think that it's intentional. I think that they are fearful that they are going to get caught of something. And the phone calls I get is, what does this person want? Why are they asking me these specific questions? So I think that they're fearful that they're doing something wrong. So my approach would, and I tell this to all of our interns in Lincoln County, is to proactively address them. So for example, what Dr. Lamb said there, what are our budget priorities? Rephrase your questioning, not just that it's specific, like where's our budget? It's supposed to be public. That's probably the best advice that I have. And if they don't, there's always someone in the district's finance department that can help, the associate superintendent. If you're continuing to have roadblocks, I mean, for me in our district, it's me, but the interns have me as a point person if there's something that they can't get from their principal. Usually there's a reason why. We have one situation in Lincoln County where there's an issue with money. The principal was placed there because there was an issue with money in the past. And so now he has 3 interns asking him for money. And so that made him very, very uncomfortable. So again, it's all about that conversation, and you're going to learn how to start playing chess and a little bit of politics with getting things that you need to run a school. And it starts with that conversation.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Thank you for that. This is what you've got to learn is leadership and personal power are more than a title or a position. You can lead from where you are, and that you lead with your knowledge and your ability to communicate effectively with people and the knowledge that you have. The law. If they don't, they're hoping that you don't. We're not doing this for some underhanded, or we're not playing gotcha or whatever, but you can't learn these things just by reading a chapter in a book. You've got to get out there and not only about the budget and the codes and those things, but also about the politics of how things work. There's how the law says it's supposed to work, and then there's the politics of how things work. And that's part of the reason why we get you out there, getting things from your principal, getting things from your central office. It gets you known in your district as well. All of a sudden, now, if you're the village idiot and you go out there and do these things, I can't help. But hopefully you will have some some professionalism to you. So when you go out there, people will say, well, that's a pretty sharp fella or pretty sharp gal. You know, they're asking the right kinds of questions. They seem nice. They seem like that they're interested in doing this for a career. And a lot of people will get behind you, and you'll find supporters and sponsors and mentors out there that you never knew that you had, or you just that you come across these folks. There's a lot of folks that want to help you, and they want to see you succeed. Sometimes not so much at the school level, but more sometimes at the district level. There are folks out there that want to see you succeed. So that's the notion here. So be out there rounding up those things. I see about half of you have got your task 1 done. I do want to comment on task 1. Make sure that you're complete. When I talk about the state report card, everything that's on there, we need to know your academics, your teacher quality, your discipline numbers. We need to know all your numbers. Now, you know, I am a big non-fan of the TV show Shark Tank, but my wife loves it. I hate it with a burning passion. But one of the things those people do say every week that you got to hear every week is you got to know your numbers. How do you expect to make a good number go up or a bad number go down if you don't know what your numbers are? You got to know what your numbers are, folks. This is a numbers business. You know, your salary is dependent upon numbers, the number of teachers you get, how much money you get, whether you get to keep your job or not. It's all dependent upon numbers. Can you make a good number, which is academic achievement, go up, or a bad number, which is disciplinary instance? Can you make them go down? Everything's about numbers. You got to know your numbers. So we need to know your academic achievement. You know, we need to know all those things. So make sure that your task 1 is complete. Now, task 2, I'm going to say this again, and I've got it under, you know, it's in your Blackboard from last week. Task 2 of the OMA, simply take all the labels off APTEL task 1, 2, and 3. Don't forget to include the graphic organizer summary in task 3 of your professional growth plan, because that's the piece we need. We need that growth plan. That's what we need. That summary of it is in that graphic organizer that you did at the end of task 3 of the APTEL. That's what we need. Take the labels like the task and the directions and the prompts off task 1, 2, and 3, plug it into the bullets of OMA task 2. It's a simple copy and paste. It's no new work. Take you about 30 minutes or less, just like dominoes. Easy peasy.
Hey, Dr. Lamb.
Yes.
Dr. Lamb, can you repeat what you said? Because you froze on me.
Task 1, 2, and 3 of the APTEL. Take the labels off of them, plug them into the bullets of OMA task 2, and you're done. Just that simple. Do not forget to include the graphic organizer summary of your growth plan from task 3 of the APTEL. That's the piece I want the most. Now, don't get this one wrong. I'm going to take your hide off if you get this one wrong. This one is just too easy. It's a simple copy and paste. Get this one right. APTEL, the one you did last semester, first 3 tasks. Take all the APTEL directions, labels off of those first 3 tasks. Plug them into the 3 bullets of OMA task 2. Easy peasy. Include the graphic organizer summary. If you didn't do one last semester, you do it now. Use our standard graphic organizer. I want that growth plan summarized at the end of OMA task 2. That was at the end of APTEL task 3. I want that summary of that growth plan. We're going to build on that thing. All right. Any questions on OMA task 1 or 2? Some of you, where are you going to get behind now? Again, I told you, I'm not your mama. I'm not going to tell you every Monday where you are. Got to keep up with yourself. That's part of being a school administrator. Now, This week, the task was our weekly assignment was about a field trip. You're supposed to find out what your policies are in your district. Nate, you did a really good job on yours. How'd you get your information?
Honestly, I just emailed my principal, who then put me onto my SOA, who's the HR lady, who turned me on to the corporate field trip policy, because we are a charter school. We're owned by Charter Schools USA, so they're pretty strict with their policy, and it's a pretty stringent document. So yeah, that's how I did it.
And that's why I called on Nate, because he had the hardest time of anybody. I knew he would. Our charter school people always have the hardest time rounding stuff like this up. Now, if he's able to do it, but you heard he had to start with an email to the principal. He had to go to another person. He had to go through 4 different layers to get it.
Yeah, it's not fun.
It's not fun, but he persevered, and his answer was great. But I knew that he would have to persevere to get his. I was surprised he got it so quickly. Well, you know, but really, so public school folks, you can't complain, because I know he had to go through twice as much as what you've got to go through to get his. So again, if you want to be mad at Nate, because he has set the curve here for you. But he did a great job. But I knew it wasn't going to be easy. It never is for our charter school folks. That's a really hard one for them. Looks simple. It is simple for public school, but it's not nearly as simple for them.
Yeah,
And he was
you know,
able to get it, and he followed the chain and got it. That's what we're talking about, personal power, being a leader where you are.
yeah, you noticed my task 1 isn't turned in yet, because I'm still missing some information I still need to get. So I'm waiting on that.
That's why I said we get an extra week, because task 2 is just a copy and paste. But you're exactly right. I know, you know, I had Kaylee Easton last semester, and Kaylee's the same way. Trying to gather stuff from charter schools like pulling teeth. It's like trying to pull teeth. So, you know, you got to get out there to get it though, folks. It won't, you know, don't be the kind of person that when they go fishing, they think the fish ought to jump in the boat with. You got to get out and get after it. Willie, what's your question?
What they told me, Dr. Lamb, was I've been to the principal, the assistant principal, the principal's main secretary, and so far I got the form for the bus, the form for the parents to sign.
Yeah.
But I mean, the principal told me, you know, if anything was to happen, the procedures are simple. Just contact 911 first.
That's
call
correct.
him second, and he will call the parent.
That's it. Well, I mean, you got it then. That's
I just want something in writing.
Yeah, I mean, the whole notion is when we look at negligence, liability, that means you can be sued and lose your house. There are 3 functions of negligence: nonfeasance, misfeasance, and malfeasance. And so let's go in reverse order here. Malfeasance is you knowingly did the wrong thing. Misfeasance is you did the wrong thing. You didn't know it was the wrong thing, but you did the wrong thing. And nonfeasance is you had a duty to act and you didn't do it. That means you got to call 911 first. And if you don't, when you delay emergency personnel in any way, they're going to get you for negligence. They're going to get you on nonfeasance. That you had a duty to act, to call 911, and you didn't. You call the bus garage first, or you call back to the school. You delayed getting emergency personnel on the scene. And even if it's only for 30 seconds or a minute or 2 minutes, it doesn't matter. You know, it's one of those things in court. Did you delay? Did you call them immediately? Well, no, I called the principal because I didn't know about the public relations. But we don't care about public relations. We care about people's lives. That's the notion here. That's the notion. And your principal, Mr. Alexander, told you Mr. Massey told you exactly the right thing. We call 911 first, then we call the school, and then number 3, we keep our mouth shut. We don't talk to anybody, police, media, parents. We don't tell anybody anything. All statements go through Public Information Office. We don't say anything because we can be held liable or accountable for things that we said. So, you know, that's the notion here. But what is your backstory? You know, what do you got to go through? Make sure you got, you know, what does your district put you through? But that's the thing that you got to learn here is you can't be like, what was it? Homer Simpson or Bart or one of those stupid cartoons that said you can't get in trouble if you don't do nothing. Well, yes, you can. Yes, you can. You have a duty to act. And if you don't follow through on that, then yes, bad things can happen to you. You can lose your house. And that's what we're trying to do, is not lose our houses here. All right, so we've talked about case studies. We talked about task 1 and task 2. We've gone over negligence on the field trip. I wanted to do that. I want to talk about case study 1. Case study 1 is due in 2 weeks. So this is the gong sounding. Somebody make a gong sound. This is the gong sounding that you've got 2 weeks. Your group should be getting together. You said you had groups already formed. You should get your groups together and get started on your PowerPoint presentation on your case study 1 that's due 2 weeks from tonight. I always give you a 2-week notice. Now, here are some things that you can't get wrong. Let me share my screen and let's go back to 115C 288. Who does it says grades and classifies pupils?
The principal.
That's correct. So in our first case study, when we look at it, let me go to that. When we go to case study 1, the crux of this case is that a teacher has assigned a failing grade for the year for Bobby. Now, before we get started, I always say this first. And everybody says, well, I didn't read this in the case. Listen to me carefully. I'm not saying Bobby was a turd. What I'm saying is Bobby might be a turd. Got it? So this teacher is making a run at Bobby. The teacher has taken a homework assignment, one homework assignment, and made it count more than half the yearly grade and has failed Bobby in his 8th grade year. The principal is now involved because Bobby got no due process. Bobby got the most punishment that we can give a student. Let me stop my share. The most punishment that we can give a student is to exclude them for a year for disciplinary or whatever. We've taken an academic problem, made it a discipline problem, and we've excluded Bobby for a whole year. You say, well, we didn't exclude him. He just failed. Well, his academic career is on hold for a year. We have effectively given him a 0 tolerance expulsion, which means we've excluded him for a year and given him no due process based on one homework grade. Teacher took a homework grade and made it count more than half the yearly grade. What are our problems here? Well, don't be one of those stupid students of mine who say, well, the policy said he may fail. It means he may fail that assignment. Again, you can't fail for the year on one assignment. You can't say if a kid cheats, you can fail him for the year. You got to go to your code of conduct. Generally, any code of conduct says you can do for kid cheating is give him a chance to make it up for and or up to one day of in-school suspension. She expelled him, excluded him for a whole year over a homework grade. A homework, not always homework for the year, one homework grade. Now, why would somebody do something like this? Again, we'll assume Bobby's a turd and he's been a pain all year long. And this is a chance for her to take a run at him. What are you going to do? You got to know the law. You're the one that assigns the grades, not the teacher. You got to know what does your code of conduct say about dishonesty, cheating? What's the most that you can give them? What does the state that you work in say about final grades? What are they composed of? We'll just use North Carolina, for example. According to the State Board of Education, the most that any grade can count is between 20 and 30% of the yearly total, and that's the state exam. End of course or end of grade can only count up to 30%. Most districts count at 20. But the state also says homework in aggregate can only count 10% of the grade maximum in aggregate for the whole year. This was one homework assignment, one. And the teacher manipulated it to count more than half the yearly grade, more than 50%. Now, don't be that blithering idiot that also is going to come on in 2 weeks and argue that the teacher didn't know. During that required work day that you have at the beginning of every year, at least one of them, they go over the faculty handbook. What's the faculty handbook contain? It contains the grading scale for your district and for your school. That's state law. So don't argue that the teacher didn't know or that it's an administrator's fault for not telling them. They did. You have to know that as well. You have to know what is the state law in terms of what things can count. I'll just go ahead and tell you, 10% or less in aggregate. One homework assignment would be less than 1/10 of 1 point on the yearly grade. This teacher made it more than 50%. Did Bobby get a hearing? No. Well, Bobby can go to summer school according to federal law. If you do a zero tolerance, even if you offer them an alternative, like an alternative school or summer school, that does not change the fact that you illegally excluded them for a year on a zero tolerance expulsion. Does not change that. These are the things that you've got to dig into that case study. Don't just say we support, principals got to always support teachers. No, you don't. When you were just a little kid and your mother said to you, if your friend Billy jumped off the roof, would you jump off too? The answer is no, I'm not the village idiot. You can't, and don't be one of those people that says, well, you know, in public, I would support the teacher, but in private, I'd tell her, no. Just because the teacher broke the law and is willing to sacrifice her job in her house doesn't mean that you have to support that. Who do you have to be a champion for? Teachers or kids? This is one of those opportunities where you have to understand that you must be a champion for students. You can't support illegal behavior. This teacher has broke so many laws. Billy never got a, Bobby never got a chance to, to redress this issue. He never got to redo the assignment. Even if he didn't do the assignment, if you gave him a 0, it wouldn't make 1/10 of a point difference in his final grade. But the teacher illegally manipulated the state grading scale, which said 10% maximum for the year, and made this one assignment count more than half of his yearly grade. Made a simple academic issue a disciplinary issue and excluded this kid and violated federal law and state law. This is not a principal problem. The principal didn't do this wrong. And the superintendent in this case might be spineless, I don't know, but the superintendent's actions are very clear. Superintendent does not tell the principal what to do. Why? Because they can't. The superintendent cannot tell the principal to assign a grade, because the state law says it's the principal's responsibility to do that. The superintendent knows that and will not ever say, well, give him this or give him that, because that's a violation of the law. And that can be traced back to them. And they don't want to lose their house either, because they got a lot nicer house than you. So they don't want to lose theirs either. So the notion here, folks, and I'm giving you all the answers to this, the notion here is this is not an administrator not doing their job. This is not we must support teachers. This is not Billy was a turd all year and we got to find a way to get back at Billy. This is what happens when you are the person in charge of a building and grade and classify kids. What happens when you have a teacher make a run at a kid like this? What do you do now? And so you not only need to look at the law, you need to, you need to look at the 4 ethical paradigms as well. Under that lesson plan role of the principal, I have the 4 ethical paradigms as well. The 4 ethical paradigms are justice, care, critique, and profession. What are you going to do here? What are you going to do to this teacher? What are you going to do about Bobby's grade? I mean, what are you going to do here? And I don't be one of those people who say, well, if I don't support this teacher, the faculty will get mad at me. Well, if they get mad at you, then they're not, you need to get rid of them too. Good teachers know that you can't abuse kids. This is not the way that we run school. We have to be champions for children. We can't do things just because we can. So that's the setup for the case study in 2 weeks. Does anybody have a problem with their team? Everybody knows who their team is, and everybody is ready to go. All right. I'm looking forward to those. Now, if you get it wrong, I'm going to stop you during your presentation. Everybody's going to present on the same night. I will stop you because I don't want disinformation out there. But again, look at what's the law on the grading. You know that the grading has to be advertised. What's the law in look at your district, talk to your principal. What's the grading, what, if you don't know it, it should be in your faculty handbook. What's, how much does homework count? How much does classwork count? How much do local assessment, that means tests, how much state tests? All that should be in your faculty handbook. What does your code of conduct say in terms of if a kid's cheating, what does that say? What are you supposed to do? And let's look at that one. And I apologize before we start that I don't have that already pulled up, but it's a website and it keeps going down on me. So if we look at next week, right here, I've got the old CMS code of conduct here again. The website's not working, and so I'm gonna pull this old one up. That's that I made into a Word document at some time in the past, if it'll pop up here for us. There we go. And so let's see. And we're gonna go over all this next week about the legal piece. We're gonna set up due process tonight, and then we'll start in discipline next week, and it takes a couple of weeks to get through all this. But let's go here. They use attendance, food, beverage, medication, student dress, personal property, misrepresentation, cheating, honor code violation. Level 1 response. We go back and look at what a level 1 response is. No, out of that, the most it can be, because level 1 is no days. Can't even suspend a kid out of school on a level 1. The most you can do on a level 1, I would say, is 1 day of in-school suspension. That's the most you can do. There's other things you could do. You could give a verbal warning, proper, suspend after school detention or Saturday school, behavior contract, referral to your, to MD. But the most, this would be the most. This teacher gave Bobby a 1-year exclusion. You need to read about zero tolerance expulsions. Those have to be reported to the state. That you have to tell on yourself if you do that. That's a federal law violation to put a kid out without due process, which leads us into due process. And so I made you a little quick and easy primer, and I put it under tonight's lesson. So here's a due process summary. As we talked about last week in our relevant court cases, in 1969, during the height of the Vietnam War, students were protesting the war. That's back during my era. And it was determined that students had rights, due process. You couldn't just summarily throw kids out of school, that you had to due process them, that they had due process of the law. And so there's 2 types of due process. There's the substance, what you're supposed to get, and procedural, what did they actually give you? So let's work through that right quick. So here's the notion. Bobby got the substance of the due process is Bobby may or may not get to make that up, but he may get a failing grade. But the most punishment you give him is 1 day in school suspension. That's not what Bobby got. Bobby got excluded for a whole year. He failed for the year. So the notion here is the procedure didn't match the substance. The substance is he may get a failing grade, he may make it up, but the most you can give him is 1 day of ISS. That's not what he got. In reality, he didn't get to present his side of the story. Processes must be announced in the disciplinary data manuals and district code of conduct. It was. I just read it, didn't I? That's what it was advertised. That's the most he can get. He has the right to be informed of the charges against him. He has the right to hear the evidence, witnesses against him. Bobby admitted what he did. Yeah, he turned in his brother's homework paper. There's no big deal here. Right to respond to the charges and give their side of the story. He said he was busy. Right to present witnesses, but he has the right not to be treated arbitrarily or capriciously. And therein lies our problem. Arbitrary is me and Nate are out back smoking, and Dr. Sane catches us. He sends Nate back to class and he shoots me. Well, he punished me and not Nate. That would be arbitrary, but capriciously. Shooting me is a little much for smoking, don't you think? Well, basically what happened here is, you know, I don't know if he was treated arbitrarily or not, if she, if she did the same thing to everybody that cheated, but she gave way more punishment than the code of conduct said that he was entitled to. The most you could give him is 1 day of ISS, and she gave him a year exclusion. That's a little much. And so she did not follow substantive due process. That's the notion here. Every time, and see, here's the thing, I had you watching a due process this semester with your assistant principal and then interviewing them. And the whole notion here is there's no shortcut. Discipline takes time. And it should be focused on restorative justice, not punishment or vengeance. It should be based on trying to be a learning, teachable moment for students and get them to do better and amend their behavior. But being capricious and shooting one for smoking is a little much, or failing one for the year over turning in his brother's homework paper, that's a little much. We don't have very much moral high ground when we do bad things like that. Teachers do stuff like that, not always, but from time to time, they'll take a run at a kid who's been a pain in their you-know-what all year long. They'll take a run at him. That's your job not to allow that to happen. But you can see, in this case, that teacher has violated Bobby's due process rights. This is a loser in court. There's no way to save face in court on this one. You're going to lose your house on this one if you support the teacher. This is an easy one. I mean, this is so egregious, doing something like this to a kid over turning in his brother's homework assignment. Oh my Lord. What if he'd done something really bad? What would you have done to him then? I mean, we've got to understand, capricious, whatever the handbook says, that's what we get. Now, one of my favorite stories is I was doing a due process hearing at Providence High School with a really, really well-to-do kid. He was 18 years old. He brought 2 weapons to school, and he brought his attorney to the hearing, and I was there for the district conducting his legal hearing. This was a high-profile case, and he admitted on the record that he brought them. And when we were doing the wrap up of the case, and I advised him, that he brought his own attorney, he didn't have to speak. And his attorney had him give testimony against himself. And I told him, this is going to be used in court of law. You're 18 years old. And in the closing arguments, his attorney made the argument to me, who was the arbiter of the case, the judge of the case, that the case should be kicked out based on that the punishment that was given to the student was capricious. That according to the handbook, the most he could be given was 5 days of out of school suspension. And I had to point out to him that we were in Providence High School and that he was reading from the elementary code of conduct, that the high school code of conduct was 10 days as he'd been given. And then he wanted to go back and strike his client's testimony. And that was, no, we can't do that. It's already been recorded and been documented. And so the notion here is, you've got to follow that handbook, whatever it is. This is a time when the attorney got the wrong one, and and down the road on appeal, our associate general counsel, who handled those that work for me, appealed and said to me, should we, we ought to give them a break here. And I said, well, I don't have a problem with giving the break here, but now the attorney took the money to represent this case, that he didn't know his job. I can't help him with that. I do want to help the student. We did help the student, but now the attorney, he had to suffer the slings and arrows of not knowing his job. Now, full disclosure, he not only did he look like Booger from Revenge of the Nerds, he looked like he was about 12. I mean, I think he still had his scab on his booster shot. He was just straight out of law school. But he took these people's money, and this is real life. You can't do stuff like that. But we did help the student in that one. But the whole notion here is whatever the handbook says, that's what we have to do. That's a contract. That's a due process contract with parents and students, that, you know, that code of conduct that we have. And we have to follow that thing religiously. We can't just be out on our own. Dr. Stain, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk about that.
I'm just sitting here shaking my head because at the end of the day, the gist of every student handbook is that students have rights. And as soon as we violate them, it's on us. And as like you used the reference, they may be a turd. As bad as that kid is, as deserving as they are of whatever is happening to them, as soon as we violate their rights, we become the ones that are at fault. We're negligent. So, you know, last year I had probably 10 parent grievances from the same principal that just was not even allowing the students to talk about their side of the story. And it's as simple as that. If the principal would have called the students up who were receiving consequences and just allowed them to express their side, it would have solved everything. So I hope that you're understanding that as long as you cross your T's, dot your I's in the beginning, the end is much better.
Yes.
But again, the biggest thing is that students do have rights. Remember that always.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And you must know what those rights are and where you can find them. You've got a district manual code of conduct that has all these, and it has the punishments. Now, understanding that this all emanates from a state manual. Now, the state manual does not say what punishment you ought to give. It stops short of that and says the local board has to decide. These are the infractions. This is the reporting. This is the law that goes into all this stuff. Now, the actual, what the consequences are, we're not telling you that piece. That's up to the local. And that's when the local code of conduct is. So you have to balance these two documents. What does the state say is a violation? Reporting it, who I got to report it to, all the things that I have to do on this side. And then the district says, all right, this is the process that you will go through, and this is the limits on the punishment. This is the minimum, this is the maximum that you will do. So the state doesn't set consequences. That's the local, but they set everything up to that point. And the local says, this is the due process you'll get, and this is what you'll get once we adjudicate. And you've got to understand those. And so, again, I want us to look at that document. I've got it in for next week. Again, the setup. Now, this is your Bible in terms of, so I've got this document under tonight. But looking at, I've got a document under case studies on zero tolerance. And there's a lot of bad things about it. Let's see. And there's the code of conduct. That's what that I was referring to. Let me see. Here it is. North Carolina Disciplinary Data Reporting Manual. And so what this is, one handy dandy reference that has all of your state law board and state board of education policies all in one handy dandy place, and all of your reporting requirements and those kinds of things. It has all of that stuff in here. Now, please remember, since 2014, that in North Carolina, and I know in South Carolina, everything goes into Power School, and federal reporting comes out of that as well. Let me say that again. I used to, when I did this for Charlotte Meck, when I was number 2, and I had to be the one that signed this and turned it in every year, I had to go separately and out of this database pull all the stuff that the Office of Civil Rights, the federal government, wanted. That doesn't happen anymore. It all comes out of Power School now, and the state pulls it and sends it to the Office of Civil Rights, the federal government. And what happens if you don't give the feds the data that they're paying for? They'll flip the switch. They'll quit sending you money. All right, you say, well, Dale, why is that? Sounds like a minor point. No, it's a major point here, folks. What that means is OCR, the reporting guidelines are much, much stricter than state guidelines. State says, here are the things you got to report to us. State says you have to report everything because they're looking for patterns. So now, since 2014, since OCR reporting comes out of Power School, if a kid gets written up for something in your school, it has to be reflected in Power School. Let me say this again, and I'm going to say this, and please hear what I say. There is no major, there is no minor. There are only incidents. Do not get into that. Well, I didn't report that because that was a minor incident. No, that's not what the law says. Or don't be that idiot that says, well, I didn't suspend that kid, so I don't have to tell anybody. No, that's the same notion as, again, me and Nate got caught smoking, and Dr. Sane shot me. If he leaves town, does that mean and don't get punished for that? That means I'm not dead? No, we report incidents, not outcomes. And so this notion, if I don't suspend a kid, I don't have to report it. That is not true. You have to report everything that goes on in your building, even if all you do is a conference with the kid. It does not matter. If that kid was referred for a disciplinary incident in your building, it has to go in Power School, because we not only pull our state data, we pull our civil rights data out of that database as well. That is a biggie. This notion of, well, we've handled that with in-house with PBIS, it doesn't matter. You still got to report what happened. You can't just say we use this third-party software and that's what the state refers to it as, and that's how we got our numbers down. No, that's just cheating, folks. That's just cheating. We took one of those new leaders for new school APs that didn't have any training, put her at Vance High School years ago, and at the end of the month didn't have any disciplinary data incidents reported. And I thought it was something, wrong with our system. State called me and said, what in the world's going on? They didn't say it that nicely though. And I went hot-footed up to Vance, and she said, well, they've said get the number of incidents down. I said, what they meant was to get teachers out of the lounge, make them come out and do their duty, have supervision in the hot spots, not just don't report what went on in the building. And basically she pointed out to me is, it's just like me. I can lose weight one or two ways. I can eat better and work out, or I can reach down, if I can reach it and turn the wheel on the front of the scale, I can cheat. And she just said it's easier to cheat than to get teachers to go out and do their job. And I'm sure that was and my wife said, well, what happened to her? I said, well, I don't know if she went home or not, honey, but she couldn't stay with us. I had to let her go that day. She told me I intentionally cheated because it was easier than actually doing the real thing. So what I'm telling you is if you get this wrong, we'll have to let you go. You can't, if we catch you underreporting or not reporting or misreporting, then this carries state and federal consequences and big amount of money. I think the state that day that they didn't have the data from Vance that month, I think they mentioned the figure $40 million. That's enough to get your attention. And that was in 2010, I believe, when that was. That was real money. I think that was the figure that they mentioned that we'll be holding back this month until we get the data from that school. They get kind of ugly. They'll talk strong to you. But that's the way it works. And so here is the manual, and it says that it's organized around incidents. It doesn't say anything about, we only record suspensions or what. It says we organize around incidents, and it goes great, and it tells you what things had to be reported from 115C288. It also tells you about general statutes right here that this all covers, and the State Board of Education and state board policies. It brings all the law right in here and tells you this is why you have to do this. This is not optional. All these laws are right here, and it defines for you your acts of violence here. These are your 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 acts of violence. These will count against you in your persistently dangerous calculation for No Child Left Behind. These 9 right here, if these happened on your campus, these will count against you. And if you have too many of these over a 2-year period, you get declared persistently dangerous, you're out of work. They send you home. 2 years in a row with too many of these, you get one for every 200 kids. It's half of 1%. If you exceed that, it's not going to go well for you. That's 5 for every 1,000 or 1 for every 200 kids in your building of these incidents. And we'll talk about how to try to avoid those. We'll talk about that with antecedent behaviors. But all these policies are here, 0 tolerance. You have to, if you do that, a requirement, CRDC, that would be, that's the Office of Civil Rights. Basically, you have to report these. Expulsion under D, first by moving child in the regular school. This is against the law. And here's the federal definition that you have to tell on yourself if you do that. That's what I'm telling you. And you get caught doing that, you'll lose your job. If you have a 0 tolerance expulsion or suspension, you will lose your job if you get deemed that you did this. You say, well, I wouldn't tell them I did it. Well, yeah, you have to. You get caught not telling them, you lose your job. You tell them, you lose your job. But the district has to tell it as well, because there'll be a fine coming for you, and a pretty hefty for your district. You have to tell this. You have to report seclusion, illegal seclusion and restraints as well. Again, there'll be a fine coming from you, but here's everything that has to be reported. And when you look at this long list, it's everything. There's nothing that doesn't have to get reported. Again, by the time you do all this stuff, knowing that your OCR stuff comes out of here, anything that happens in your building is going to have to be reported. You're going to have to go through due process to make sure that you've done the right thing. This is how you're calculated for your persistently dangerous. You got to report bullying, all the harassment, all this stuff. You have all of these, all this stuff. If you do any of these things are all against the law. All of them have to be reported. If you do adversive, restraint, seclusion, if you chain a kid to the radiator, which happens. All these things, what happens to happen here, and we have definitions at the end for our acts of crime and violence, and they're very, very graphic, by the way, so I won't read them out loud as a Baptist, but here all of them are. But you have got to report all this stuff, folks. It is, and you've got to follow the law. When you're processing discipline, it's easier to get mad. Like Dr. Stain said, it's easy to get mad and say, I know what you did. And you can't do that. You've got to let them, you got to follow due process. You've got to follow what the state says on reporting. You've got to follow your local code of conduct on that. Now, I've got one thing else that I want to show you tonight. Everybody knows that you're required to have a program in place for bullying prevention. I've got a slideshow that might be helpful with that. Every school is required to have a bullying prevention program. If you don't have one, then you need to read this slide if you weren't aware of that. And the other thing that I want to close out tonight with is antecedent behaviors. And so this is pretty, I did this presentation in 2011 at the big conference at Curry in Greensboro. I was the keynote. And that was 11 years ago, folks. So how prescient was I 11 years ago when I said, these are the big things that are coming in the school business? Gang activity, cyberbullying, cyberbullying, sexual harassment, sex. Not bad. Wasn't clairvoyant. I was just reading the data from CMS. And these were things that were happening. So the whole notion, and I've got all this together in here, and it covers all the stuff if you want to know more about it. But here's the notion, and here's my argument tonight. If you want to stop the big things, you got to stop the little things first. if you allow gang activity, pretty soon you'll have weapons, you'll have violent assaults, you'll have drugs. That's the corner of the realm for them. If you allow sexting and inappropriate display of affection and pictures and all that, pretty soon you'll have sexual assault, sexual offense, rape, indecent liberties. You know, these are the things that get out of control in your building, the little things that become a big thing. One of our case studies later on that we're going to have with Jimmy and Willie, the same sex couple, is it got out of control in the community because they allowed Jimmy and Willie to do inappropriate displays of affection and got the whole community stirred up. Well, it wouldn't matter if it was Jimmy and Willie or Jimmy and Sally. We can't allow those things in school because they get out of control. So that's our notion here. Willie, you've got your hand up again.
Yes, sir. I just wanted to know if it was one of those documents available for South Carolina, like you showed for North Carolina. Okay.
Yes, you have to find it though.
Okay.
Yes, there are companion documents for all the things that I showed for North Carolina. And so the next question is why don't you find them for us for South Carolina? Because I'm not supposed to. We are a CAPE program, but we don't have a brick and mortar in South Carolina. So I'm not supposed to teach you South Carolina stuff directly. You'll have to talk to your South Carolina Department of Education about that little requirement that they have. I would love to provide all the equitable stuff for you, but I'm not supposed to. You're supposed to find it yourself. That's the ruling that they've made. NCDPI doesn't have a problem with that. South Carolina Department of Education does. I don't know why, but I don't get into that. So I have to be careful not to show you their stuff because we're not a brick and mortar located in South Carolina. They reserve that for those. Everything I show you, there is a companion, as I said, in South Carolina. North Carolina is not unique in any of these things. There is a reporting manual in South Carolina. You use Power School as well. All these things are there. The manual is the same. All right, so I'm going to let Dr. Singh close this out with little things becoming big things. I'm going to talk more about it next week, but I'm going to let him close us out tonight with that notion.
So little things becoming big things and Power School. I've got a story for you that I'm working on right now. We're getting ready to dismiss an assistant principal for doing something as simple as this, going into Power School and deleting offenses or incidents, because after further investigation, she found that this person found that those things did not actually happen. But just by deleting those incidents, it looked like she was cheating the system, like Dr. Lamb said. And something so simple can get you sent home. And so that is one of the worst parts of my job. I'm sure it was one of the worst parts of Dr. Lamb's job, but there are rules and procedures. And that person knows that I keep doing it, they did not follow the proper procedures from our discipline procedures, but you cannot delete. If it is escalated, there is a specific process, but just little things. And again, everything I feel like I say here is scaring you, and it's not to scare you, it's to prepare you. Because in this job, when you take it, it is a great job, but it is a job that you have to know the procedures, not every specific procedure, but you have to have access to them and have notebooks and be aware of them. And there was a great quote in the book that said that we're not responsible for knowing we're not responsible for supervising students every second of the day. However, we're expected to exercise a reasonable degree and quality of supervision throughout the day. So again, it's a great job, but make sure you're following procedures each and every day from bell to bell, and then on the other duties as assigned.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I'll tell my story next week, which is going to be awful, but I'm gonna tell it anyway. Thank you again for joining us tonight. Y'all need to talk up more, ask more questions. Willie's asking questions. Willie needs to know stuff. I like that about Willie. Again, great job on all of you. Work on getting your task 1 done. If you have questions, let me know. Nate said he needs to quit smoking. He might get shot like I did. He didn't know he was a smoker until tonight. Everybody have a good week. I enjoyed it. I'll see you next week. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Dr. Lamb,
Yes,
I do have a question before you leave.
sure.
This has nothing to do.
For the OMA. Do I just leave those out?
So what you do is you let me share my screen. So what you do, and I had this pulled up earlier today. That's a good question. So it'll be here nearby. Okay, take your OMA template right here that I've got for you. All right, task 2. Task 2. So here's your bullets right here. See this? 1, 2, 3, 4. And so this one right here, you can take and copy it from where? You can copy it from task 1 where you just did it in the OMA, but these first 3 right here, that's the first 3 tasks. You just take and make that a bullet and take AppTel task 1 and copy and put it under that one. Make that a heading. Just make that a heading. See, here's task 1, task 2, task 3. See right here, this assessment plan.
Gotcha.
Task 1, task 2, task 3, and then just add a detail plan. That's where you make sure you've got that actual graphic organizer that goes right there. And then right here, you just copy where you did your special programs audit in task 1 of the OMA. Just copy it again, but even if you don't, it won't matter as long as you already did it task 1. I normally don't even have them put it there, but you can copy and paste it there too as well. But again,
So
this is task 1, task 2, task 3, and this is the actual plan. Goes right here under that bullet. You just slide them in there.
And you said task 4 comes from where, Dr. Lamb, that last bullet?
Came from where you did that audit in task 1 of the OMA last week.
Okay.
So as long as we got the okay from you for task 1, we don't really even need to worry about that last bullet because we've already done it.
Working with smart people.
Huh?
I like working with smart people. You're exactly right. As long as your task 1 is good, you don't even have to worry about the last bullet here.
Okay.
Look, I'm all about not doing work twice.
Exactly. That's why I said don't
Right.
reinvent the wheel. We've already done all this stuff. Just copy and slide it in there. And if your
Beautiful.
task 1's already been approved, you don't even have to do that last bullet.
Okay.
Perfect.
And do we need to wait on peer?
No, you don't ever wait on peers.
But how many of them need to look at our paper though, or how many do we need to look at?
They get like 3 days, and only one of them. If they don't look, we roll on.
Okay, thank you, sir.
We don't get caught up in that. You know, quite honestly, the whole notion at this time is after 3 semesters in the program, peer reviews it basically is not for the person you're reviewing, but for you yourself to know what the task and the prompts are, so that you become better schooled in it. I mean, at this point, you know, the feedback might be necessary, but surely y'all don't need that much feedback at this point. It's about learning the prompt, task, prompts is really what reviewing somebody's paper is about, or catching some glaring error or something. But you know,
But would you
I
like
don't
for us
get-
to just do one person's?
one
in our
person.
group?
That's all you have to do is one person.
Yes, sir.
That's it.
Well,
And I've got
can
the
I
points
ask-
set up where it won't hurt you that bad. I mean, if one person's all you got to do. I only expect you to do 3 for the OMA and 3 for the skill and roll on. But again, it reinforces that learning of how the system works. Because please remember, this is how it works out in the real world. When you do your evaluation as a school administrator, it's based on task and prompts, evidences, and artifacts. Trying to get you in that habit of being able to read something and say, this is what they want. That's the whole notion here.
Thank you.
We look at that state manual for evaluation. It's all about task and prompts, evidence, and artifacts. Now, our folks do really well at Gardner Webb. I'm not telling you they're better administrators. I'm telling you they know the system better. That's, you know, if that helps them, that's good.
Can I ask you one more question before you go? Can we discuss discussion board 3, the prompt for a second? Because I've read it several times and I don't know, I can't
Okay.
wrap my head around what it's asking.
Okay,
Um,
let's see right here.
I have been putting in long hours, so maybe that's the problem. I don't know, but I just-
Reflect on the fact that educators have been found financially responsible. Just what is negligence? What are the 3 functions of negligence? Just reflect on that fact that you understand that that negligence and that there is tort liability now. That you know that if you do something wrong, that you can be held financially responsible for that. That the district's insurance won't cover you if you know, under the 3 functions of negligence: misfeasance, malfeasance, nonfeasance. If you're convicted of one of those, it's not just the district insurance that's at risk. It's your personal wealth, your income, your job. That's the whole notion here. Do you understand that the stakes, as Dr. Sain said, we're not trying to scare you, but we're trying to get you to understand that, you know, that we're playing for keeps here. There's bad things that can happen for you if you do wrong and bad things, if you're negligent. And negligence is not just, well, I didn't mean to do something bad. It's if you had a duty to act and you didn't, you know, misfeasance, or excuse me, nonfeasance, or if you had a duty to act, you did something that turned out wrong, even though you didn't intend for it wrong, you'd still be liable for that. Or negligence, you know, or malfeasance, which you would, like we're talking about tonight with our first case study. That lady intentionally tried to harm Bobby. I mean, she could be sued and lose her house over that deal. She intentionally tried to harm Bobby. That's malfeasance. Not a clearer case could be had than that one was. So that's what we're just, you know, here, just discussed it. I understand that I'm playing for keeps here, that they can come after me financially if I do bad things. I mean, that's what I want you to reflect on, is that you get it. That, you know, that there's just, as Dr. Sain said, there's consequences if you do bad things. You got to get that. You got to understand that. It's not just you can lose your job, you can lose your wealth too. I mean, they can come after you, they can come after your money.
And couldn't that be something as simple as a teacher not showing up for their supervision duty and something bad happening?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Did you know, doing, and just like for an administrator, you got a teacher you know is not supervised, coming in late every morning, not on bus duty. What did you do? You knew it, didn't do anything. Somebody gets run over in the bus lot. Where was the teacher? Well, they didn't come. Well, but did you not know? You knew they weren't coming. I had a football coach who would, you know, he'd be late for his first period class, so I put him on bus duty, with car duty with me every morning, make him come to work. I knew if he was there or not. I didn't have to bother to go up his room to see if he was there first period. I put him on that, and I knew him if he wasn't there. And I told him, you know, 3 strikes, you're out. Third time I write you up, I'm gonna move for your dismissal at the same time. You know, I can't take the liability of you not showing up. Your first period class is sitting there unattended. So I'm gonna make sure you're here every morning, because this is on me now. I don't want to lose my house. This is on me. You know, you've gone out in public and bragged how you don't, you know, your first period class can teach themselves. Well, they do better than you. And so you've made this a public thing now, and I'm on the hook here. So I'm gonna put you back on the hook.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, anybody else, anything? All right, I think we're done. Everybody have a good evening. We'll see you next
You
week.
too, thanks.
Thanks, bye-bye.
Bye.